Okay, it is 6 o'clock, and I will call this regular meeting of the Mercer Island School District Board of Directors to order. First up on our agenda, 1B, is establishment of the agenda.
I move we establish the agenda as published.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the agenda is established. First up, we'll go to approval of our prior meeting minutes. We have 3 meetings to approve. We can do them separately or bundle them together. Is there a preference?
All as one sounds fine.
Mhm.
I move we approve board meeting minutes in C, D, and E.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving minutes in section C, D, and E simultaneously, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then the minutes are approved. Okay, so we'll move on to section 1F, which is Board Policy 1800 OE9, Communication and Support to the Board, Sustainability Resolution number 681.
So just for everyone's information, there are 2 documents attached. One is the marked or original document with some of the changes, and then a clean document is there as well. So you can see both as it started and the completed document.
I just want to say thank you for all the input that we got on this, and thank you to, I see Suzanne Riley in the audience, and is Nancy Weil here too? Maybe not. They helped spur the initiative to get a resolution, and I just want to thank everybody for their contributions to it, and I'm really pleased with it, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve it tonight.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 681, Sustainability and Environmental Stewardship. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion at this time, all in favor of approving resolution number 681, Sustainability and Environmental Stewardship, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstention? Seeing none, it is unanimous. We have adopted resolution number 681, Sustainability and Environmental Stewardship. And then we'll gain your signatures at the reception for that. Thank you so much.
So moving on now to our recognition. We have our annual very exciting recognition of our Mercer Island Schools Foundation. So I would like to ask the board, including our student representatives, to come to the front of the dais because I know that will certainly help us reach out to our Schools Foundation representatives as well as create a really great picture opportunity. So I'd like to introduce Tammy Shoup, who is the new executive director for the Schools Foundation, and we are excited to be working with Tammy in her inaugural year as our executive director, but very familiar on our foundation. And I'm going to ask Tammy to give us a few words.
Hello. I first want to introduce Betsy O'Connell, who is with me. We hired her recently, and she is working in development with us and has just been fantastic. But we are here to, it's kind of the annual presentation of our big check to the district, and we're so happy to be here and be able to give you this money. This money represents what was raised last year, 2018-19 school year. And it's what we raised during the entire year. So we have a check for you this year for $1,088,000.
And if we could all stay here, we are going to move on to our recognition of our outgoing board directors. And I have a few words, and we'll pass the mic if any of our other directors do. But I'm going to start with Director Drinkwater, Tracy Drinkwater. Tracy served on the board of directors for 4 years, including serving as vice president in 16-17 and president in 17-18, as well as a number of district committees. As a former math and special education teacher in our district, a tutor in our community, as well as working in higher education, Tracy brought a variety of important skills to the board. As a parent of a special needs child, she has been an articulate advocate for special education and inclusion. Tracy has also led the board in her passion for sustainability awareness and as well as support for school safety. We know that although she is leaving the board, she will continue to volunteer in our community as she has for over 20 years. She will continue as a member of Rotary, so I get to see her there, and in her newest endeavor of building a math museum. We want to thank Tracy for everything she's done to support the students and the families of Mercer Island. We have a small token of appreciation for Tracy, and something from me personal. What I love about this board is the hard work we do. There's always a sense of humor in the undertone. So my gift to Tracy is a little set of hand warmers, because a continuing joke between Tracy and I is, it's never warm enough in here. So, thank you. And now for Director Jorgensen. Ralph was appointed to the board to fill a vacancy in May of 2015 and was elected to a 4-year term that fall. He served as board president in 2015-16 and as vice president in 17-18. Prior to serving on the school board, Ralph volunteered extensively in the community, including serving as the co-chair of the 2014 school bond to build Northwood and the new wing of the middle school, levy campaigns, and served as VP of Advocacy for the PTA Council. As a Mercer Island High School graduate, Ralph has provided the board with much historical context of our school and community and culture, of which he is so proud of to be an Islander. He has volunteered many hours, especially as a band parent. I have seen him out there directing traffic in all kinds of weather, and including being a chaperone for the most recent Tournament of Roses trip. With his doctorate in engineering, Ralph has been an advocate for the long-range facilities planning process now underway that will serve as a blueprint for building maintenance and improvements in the future. And currently, he is busy completing his master's in teaching mathematics. And I appreciate Ralph's sense of humor as well. And so I have just a small token for him. And if I hold these up, every other board director will know exactly why I am giving him a bundle of pens, because now he will have one. Thank you. Board President, shall we take a recess at this time prior to the swearing in, or do you want to do the swearing in? We have it on the agenda to do the swearing in and then the recess. So go ahead and return to your seats, and I will remain here. And Director D'Souza can remain here because we are now going to move through our swearing in process. All right, in filling our director position number 1, we are going to start with the swearing in of his second term for Director D'Souza. So please repeat after me the oath of office. I,
I, David D'Souza,
having been duly elected to the office of Mercer Island School District number 400,
having been duly elected to the office of Mercer Island School District number 400,
Director position number 1,
Director position number 1,
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of this office as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties of this office as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America.
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And Maggie is right ready. So in position number 3, Maggie Ty Tucker, please state the following after me.
I, Maggie Ty Tucker,
Having been duly elected to the office of Mercer Island School Districts number 400,
having been duly elected to the office of Mercer Island School District number 400,
Director position number 3,
Director position number 3,
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office
as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America.
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America.
Congratulations. Here comes Tim. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please state after me. I,
Ding Tekwitam,
having been duly elected to the office of Mercer Island School District number 400,
have been duly elected to the office of Mercer Island School District number 400,
Director position number 5,
Director position number 5,
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office
as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America.
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America.
Congratulations.
To our outgoing directors, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your dedication. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve with you. And to our incoming directors, welcome to the leadership team, and I'm very excited about the great things that we're going to accomplish together. Yeah. At this time, we're going to take a brief reception, I think 15 minutes, so we can congratulate our outgoing and incoming directors. Thank you. We'll be back at 6:30. I'd like to get started in about 3 minutes, please. It is 6:30, and we are returning from recess. At the first regular meeting in December, or a regular meeting as soon thereafter, as any and all newly elected board members are seated, the board will elect from among its members a president, a vice president, and a legislative representative to serve a one-year terms. If a board member is unable to continue to serve as an officer, a replacement will be elected immediately. In the absence of both the president and vice president, the board will elect a president pro tempore who will perform the functions of the president during the latter's absence. So we will move down. This is Board Policy 1005, Board Member Reorganization of the Board. First, I want to welcome our two new directors, Director Din and Director Tucker. Welcome to the dais.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. And the first order of business is for me to call for nominations for president. So at this time, I will call for nominations for president to serve a one-year term. I will nominate. I nominate Director Lurie to serve as president of the Mercer School Board for a one-year term. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? All right. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of Director Lurie, do you accept? Do you accept?
I do accept the nomination.
Okay, sorry. It's a good thing I'm on my way out. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor of Director Lurie becoming president? A roll call vote. All right. So we'll go down the line. How do you vote? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay.
Yay.
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 Yay. All right. It is unanimous. And congratulations.
We could wait till the end. This is yours, right? Oh, that one's yours. Is this?
Well, I pre-cleared all my stuff.
You knew where you were going. All right, moving on. Thank you for the vote of confidence. I look forward to serving the board in this capacity. And I will now call for nominations for the role of vice president.
I would like to nominate Director Tucker.
Is there a second?
Second.
And Director Tucker, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Do we have any other nominations for the office of vice president? Hearing none, I will call for a vote, a roll call vote. So Director Den, will
Yay.
Yay.
I voted myself.
Yay.
Yay.
And yay. So Director Tucker, you are now serving as vice president. I know.
Expecting that.
I'll trade you cards.
And our final position, I will ask for nominations for legislative representative to serve for the ensuing year. I nominate Brian Janini Upton.
Seconded.
Are there any other nominations? And once again, a roll call vote.
Yay.
Aye.
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 Yes. So congratulations, Director Janini Upton will serve once again as legislative representative, once again, meaning he did it 2 years ago, and is also serving our state organization, WASDA, as a legislative representative for Director Area 2. So thank you for your service on that as well. And moving on to public input. The meeting is a meeting of the board in public. It is not a public meeting that guarantees interaction between members of the public and members of the board. If you would like to address the board on a particular issue, please limit your remarks to not more than 3 minutes. Appoint a spokesperson if the concern is a group concern, and if desired, provide written documentation to the board secretary. Public comments that name or otherwise identify a district student are not permitted without permission of that student's parent or legal guardian. The board may direct the superintendent to respond at a later date to the issues expressed. See, we have one request for public input. Suzanne Riley.
Thank you. Again, I'm Suzanne Riley, and I'm a member of our Action Committee for Environmental Sustainability. And I'm here with Nancy Weil. And I'm also a Mercer Island parent. I have a high schooler and a sophomore in college who graduated from the high school. And I have to change the wording of this a little bit. Thank you so much for voting in Resolution 681 for Sustainability and Environmental Stewardship. I'm so pleased that Tracy and Deborah and the board developed a comprehensive resolution that supports students to become environmental leaders, and that the school board will advocate for the inclusion of environmental and sustainable education across all academic disciplines. As a matter of fact, we just met with Diane Nielsen, who is our Green Team teacher and AP Environmental Science teacher at the high school this week, and she shared that many of the science teachers look for ways to include environmental science into their physics or chemistry lessons, and they challenge the students to critically analyze all the various sources of data being presented in the media. I'm pleased to know that our teachers and now our school district find value in implementing environmental education. The vote tonight is also incredibly timely, as Greta Thunberg was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Greta's activism has sparked a new awareness and conversation with young people. Young people are demanding change urgently, and we need to help prepare them for the challenges of the future. Thank you again for passing the resolution.
Thank you. I see no other public input, so we will move on to item 2C, our student representative report.
Hello. So this month, plenty of exciting things have happened, but we'll keep the report rather brief. At Northwood Elementary, Northwood Student Council sponsored a food drive where they were able to gather 2,798 food items. These were donated to the Mercer Island Food Pantry to support members of the Mercer Island community.
For the month of December, Northwood is continuing to review with students the positive character traits that they've learned about and practiced so far this year: kindness, cooperation, and perseverance. Students at Northwood also participated in the Wizard of Oz musical a couple nights ago.
And unfortunately, we weren't able to get reports from the rest of the elementary schools, but hopefully that will change next month. At Islander Middle School, there have been and will continue to be lots of opportunities for kids to showcase their talents. There are art shows, concerts, and plenty of classroom presentations planned for. 8th grade social studies classes will have a guest presentation on trees, depression, and suicide prevention. And 6th graders will be on stress. Not trees. I'm so sorry. A guest presentation on stress, depression, and suicide prevention. And 6th graders will be participating in a Volts and Jolts workshop put on by the Pacific Science Center. The leadership class will also be putting on an assembly the day before break during 5th and 6th period.
Moving on to the high school. At the high school, there have been quite a few school-wide events and activities lately. Recently, the Winter Sports Assembly took place. Unfortunately, attendance for this assembly was underwhelming, which is kind of a growing issue, and various equipment issues within the gym also took place, creating distractions. Despite this, leadership led the assembly with skill and are working hard to make improvements for the future.
Recently, counselors at MIHS conducted breakout sessions during Islander Hour for students to voluntarily attend. Topics covered ranged from mindfulness practices to time management and goal setting. So this is, again, with the theme of social and emotional well-being at the high school.
High school students are currently interested and participating in the new Mercer Island School District logo design competition, which we are looking forward to seeing the final result in March.
And we also really enjoyed the WASDA conference last month and had the opportunity to listen to speakers on meaningful student involvement and the importance of student representative. We're excited to modify and improve our district student board members' roles as the year continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Superintendent Report tonight, just a couple of things. The board did receive a letter of appreciation from the Mercer Island Sister City Association, just showing their appreciation and gratitude for the linkage meeting with the City Council back on October 24th, where the students from both Mercer Island and our sister city in France were able to attend and share some of their experience. So it's a letter showing that appreciation. This topic was also mentioned at our last board meeting as a discussion piece among the board directors, determining for a future meeting. And with a full agenda tonight, we'll have a discussion in January, most likely at our study session, when staff will be able to present some of the RCWs and WACs that cover this same concerns that the board may have regarding the situation. The other piece that I wanted to just share with you is, in case you didn't know, this is Computer Science Week. And a focus of Computer Science Week is the Hour of Code. But I wanted to share with you a little bit about what we're doing beyond just the Hour of Code. From our instructional technology coaches. They are providing training and a real focus in December through February in building the Hour of Code and towards increased integration and implementation of the computer science standards that are now a part of our Fundamental 2 without making it overwhelming to classroom teachers. Our instructional technology coaches in the elementary have participated in Hour of Code since its inception in 2014, and so are now in their 6th year of promoting Computer Science Week connections in kindergarten through 5th grade, and have 100% of classroom participation now. They sent me a schedule, which Craig and I are trying to touch some of them, but it is a very full schedule with all the different classes that they're meeting with. They also wanted to let you know that with the help of Andrews, our Director of Technology, all K-5 students have a code.org account built ready for them to explore computer science fundamental course from pre-reader through 5th grade. And also, in order to build equity of access across schools and increase hands-on opportunities with robotics and coding, our learning services team has supported purchasing 6 sets of the dash and dot robots, as well as B-bots. They're housed in each of the school's library for use in makerspaces as well as for classroom checkout. And our instructional technology coaches are working with our library media specialists to begin to explore the power of those tools and where they fit in makerspaces as well as in the classroom. They are very gracious for the award from the Schools Foundation to Lakeridge for a full subscription to Tinker's K-8th grade coding curriculum and interdisciplinary project suite, which has the scaffolded courses that build computer science skills in a highly engaging format. And it also offers a large suite of coding projects with direct connections to content standards in math, literacy, science, and social studies. So they're in the beginning steps of exploring the tool and comparing it to code.org, and are really starting to tackle the work of how do we embed computer science across the subject areas, particularly in our elementary classrooms. So lots happening in schools even next week. If you, I will send in my update tomorrow some of the pieces that if you have some time, let me know, and we can go visit and see some of these great things happening in classes. And that is all I have for tonight.
And we will move on to partial governance process monitoring. Item A, Board Policy 1800, Instructional Program 6th grade English Language Arts Novel, March. I see some representatives from our middle school English department here.
We do have members from our illustrious 6th grade team at Islander Middle School. I first want to just begin with a little perspective. typically we hold 4 instructional materials committee meetings each school year. The first one's usually in October, and then we hold one in January, March, and again, late May or early June. Based on the number of adoptions already coming through in the fall, which is fantastic. I was approached by the 6th grade team who said, we've really been rethinking our curriculum and the opportunities for students, and can we get one in, because we've got some great ideas for January, and at the time we were too close to the other meetings, so we held and publicized to the public that we were having an additional instructional materials committee meeting, which happened in November. I had mentioned on a couple of occasions to the board that this was coming your way, and here it is tonight. And just this morning we were with our Superintendent's Equity Advisory Committee, and it was a proud moment, I think, for our district and our community to be able to talk about Enrique's journey. March, another book that you're going to see coming up in January, as well as the other texts that have been brought before this board. And I know that goes back a couple of elections ago with some of your predecessors who also had an interest in making sure that we were offering a wider range of texts to our students. So I want to step aside now because I think our 4 educators behind me have prepared some statements and want to share with you the book March and how they intend to use it in their class. Melissa, are you starting? Okay, I'll let Melissa Gaffney. Melissa and our children are in the same elementary school and in the same class, and they sit at the same table right now. So I hear all about Claire at our dinner table from Davin, but here's Melissa.
Hopefully only good things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. That's what he says right now. Hi, thanks so much for having us here. Melissa Gaffney, 6th grade language arts at Islander Middle School. I have a copy of the book March, which I'd be happy to pass down if you guys want to look at it. And we have multiple copies. We're really excited about this text. I'll give you a little bit of background on kind of where we came to. So March is a graphic novel, and it's the autobiography of John Lewis. It's told in a 3-part series, and we were really looking at book 1 to use for sort of a variety of purposes. Last year, we piloted a graphic novel literature circle unit that students were super engaged with. We wanted to offer a variety of texts to expose students to lots of diverse perspectives and social justice issues. And March was one of the most popular books that kids selected. So we kind of got thinking, we wanted to retool our expository writing unit, so writing research papers. And the current unit that we had been working with for the last 4 years it's a rigorous, the material that we had been using was fine. It was engaging. It was about animals and humans and how they interact with each other. But we felt our students were ready for more. We thought we wanted to give them more opportunities for contemporary issues. We wanted them to be able to see themselves, or at least put themselves in other people's shoes. And so we thought that March Volume 1 would be a great way for us to teach students how to read a graphic novel, because it's a little bit more complex with the art and analyzing than just a novel. And then we are also going to use it to have students sort of explore other perspectives to launch them into the literature circle unit, where they'll choose a book about a perspective that they want to learn more about. And I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
To me?
Yeah.
Okay. So probably the most obvious, I apologize. I have been teaching all day and my brain has stopped working.
Yes.
Melissa Gaffney.
Yes.
I am covering
Oh,
controversial topics. There we go. So the most controversial topic in any kind of story about the civil rights movement that is directed towards middle school age students would be the use of the N-word. So John Lewis did not censor the N-word because he felt it was a powerful statement to use it as it had been used. That would be the most controversial concept in this book. And I have taught in 7th grade. There's a novel called brain farting again. I apologize. It's about Hotel in the Corner, Bitter and Sweet. There we go. Written by Jamie Ford, and it also included the N-word in perspective of dehumanizing Asian Americans. And I worked with multiple people to create a lesson that actually went into the brain science of what happens to your brain when you get triggered, and why language is extremely powerful, which is a cliche that my students kind of like, yes, Ms. Meyer, pen is mightier than a sword. But it's true. And the N-word is an opportunity to explore for students who are hearing the word as well as using it, unfortunately, in some cases, to understand the impact of where it came from, why it was used in this time period, as well as why it has continued to impact people today. So that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Any questions?
We'll go through the whole presentation and then we'll do questions.
That kind of was.
I think that the pushback, if I would, from the Instructional Materials Committee certainly had to do with the nature of the language, especially for sixth graders. And it's nice on that committee because we have the student voice, we have the parent voice, we have the educators, all kind of grappling with how this might come to be. And I know some of the conversation that you had shared was, really working with your other colleagues, not just in sixth grade English language arts, but all of sixth grade, and how does language come about? And so I know there'll be some deeper conversations around that, but that was certainly something that was brought up. Another one was maybe you want to just touch on the reading level and why a graphic novel, and maybe not, it may be viewed as not as complex of reading and the choice behind that.
So the reason that we chose a graphic novel was for lots of different purposes. As I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, there are so many layers to a graphic novel with analyzing art, being able to look at just the narration and also sort of speech bubbles. So it's having kids do a lot of rigorous thinking. It's also a really good scaffold for students who are English language learners or that are reluctant readers, because the art is really engaging and they can better identify with the text, or at least are more likely to get engaged if they tend to really struggle with reading. So graphic novels, the choice of a graphic novel was very intentional.
Typically on these, especially for directors Tucker and Din, who are new to the board, we do instructional material recommendations in two phases. There's a first reading, and that's where you have a chance to ask questions and discuss. And then we let it sit for 2 weeks between your meetings, and then you come back and it's either brought up again as a second reading or it's on your consent agenda. Mid-year adoptions are a little tricky because oftentimes mid-year adoptions are things that teachers are wanting to get into the hands of students right away. This happens to be another one similar to Enrique's journey. And I believe we also had a similar, was it the statistics textbook? I believe it was the AP statistics textbook. This is another one where I think the team, if you're comfortable with a vote tonight, following your discussion, it would allow them to go ahead and purchase over the break and be ready to teach in January. If you're not, we can wait until your first meeting in January, which is actually the first week back. So we don't have a lot of lag time. You could vote on that at that time, either through consent agenda or an open discussion, and then we could order after that. We can pull either off, but I think the preference by the teachers would be the sooner the better on that, but it's really up to you. Absolutely.
One other thing that I wanted to mention, at the middle school, we do a lot of work on and around Martin Luther King Day, just as, we are usually doing activities and assemblies in all classes. So another reason why we chose March was we're thinking as far as scope and sequence goes, that this would be very timely to do around the Martin Luther King holiday, also leading into African American History Month. And so that was sort of another reason why we chose this book. kind of at that time of the year because we thought it was an authentic experience for students to have rather than just kind of a one-off day that was really integrated into the curriculum. Thanks.
Great. You bet. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
So I noticed in the pamphlet given to us that there's a permission slip given to parents or a warning slip of some sort. What guidance is given to parents, and what's the warnings to enable parents to have a discussion with the kids about the use of the N-word?
Definitely. So when we did the graphic novel unit last year, we actually invited parents to come to campus, and we had all text, including March, because that was a Lit Circle book at the time. We had all parents there that they could preview the text. We talked about the issues that would come up in each of the texts. And then we had small summaries of each of the book that we emailed to parents ahead of the meeting. So they were aware they could come prepared with questions. And, I think we had maybe 10 parents or so attend. So it wasn't I don't know if that's either that they were comfortable with everything that was happening. And the parents that did come had some really great questions. And we do want to make sure with a lot of sensitive literature that we want to open it up to the community and make sure that they feel comfortable. So definitely parents are going to be made well aware of content and books. And we encourage them to have conversations with us as educators and also with their students. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not an opt-out type of format.
If parents really had concerns and did not want their children to read March, we definitely would offer like a replacement book, but it would be a grade-wide read. So the intent would be for all students in 6th grade to have a common experience.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think having it so that the info to parents helps them have a discussion with their kids about it is the right direction to go.
For sure.
As opposed to opt out.
Absolutely.
And personal experience, kids in 4th grade use the book. So I'm good with 6th graders as well, learning about it and learning about the impact of the book.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. So I read the book and I want to commend you guys and being so proactive and making sure that our curriculum reflects the diversity of the community. And so actually it is the Uni 101 book at St. Martin's University right now. And so you guys are ahead of your game. Yes. All the freshmen are reading it and I really enjoy the book. So with that being said, I hope, because I'm a professor, so, this is a conversation and I was actually a parent, Sebastian, when you guys started this unit. And I think you guys did an amazing job in providing tons of information. I'm like, wow, because I don't do this to my students. But some of the books, so we read all the books, went to the library and we went through and I made Sebastian read all the books. He picked one. And so this was a really good book, but then we were looking at like American-born Chinese. Mm-hmm. And so then when I read that, there was so it's one about how our students understand about African-American community and the issue and then the movement. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes I feel like we don't incorporate that community into our work. So I just want to have a larger understanding. What do we do as we're identifying these books? How do we reach out to the communities that it is reflective of them? And how do we get sure that we have their input and their perspective? And even though it's great that we teach our kids about the impact of the N-word, it is very different than an Asian professor teaching about the N-word than an African-American individual teaching about the N-word and how it means to the community. So I guess as we're developing this, how do we make sure that we have those voices in this process?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you for asking that question, because that is a question that kind of grinds on me a lot, especially about identity and how to represent identities without being wrong or disrespectful. So usually when I approach it and our team is approaching it very similarly, we try to highlight voices that aren't ours. and just give students opportunities to empathize. So, for example, getting a StoryCorps clip of somebody who was at the sit-ins rather than just us telling them about the sit-ins. If we could invite everybody to the classroom, that would be amazing. However, it's not possible sometimes because they have passed on or because they're just very busy. But in whatever ways we can, whether it's audio clips or film clips or reading a piece of memoir from somebody who was there and somebody who reacts to being called the N-word differently than I would, for example. So I guess in summary, we highlight people's voices that aren't really ours. We're just the catalyst to introduce students to those voices, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I hope that moving forward too, that we as a board support the faculty, the teachers, and their development of being able to feel comfortable really exploring these topics, because I know that when we actually identify these Uni 101 books, sometimes we don't pick things because we don't feel qualified.
Yeah.
And so how do we support teachers in their continual development of understanding different communities, different voices? Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did want to say I thought this book was a fantastic choice. I wish my kids had read it when they were in 6th grade. And I thought it was really interesting kind of telling John Lewis's story from his point of view, kind of from the, like, I know a lot about John Lewis, but all from the outside in, but sort of telling his story growing up from inside that, I'm talking too close to the mic, from the chicken coop, you know, kind of going out into the broader world for the first time, and kind of that perspective I thought was really valuable. The question that I had was whether, and you just answered it a little bit by saying you're going to be doing the, you know, showing StoryCorps clips and things like that. But I wondered specifically if you guys are going to present any additional information about the principles of nonviolence, because that was the one thing. And I only read the book one, not the other 2 books, but I was like, this would really leave me not understanding kind of what those principles were. So.
Yes. Short answer. Long answer. We're still working on the curriculum. We actually had a release day yesterday, so it's all in the brain. But at least, so we usually spend about a week just to teach context, because throwing this at students without context is not best practice. So one, like at least a day, probably more like 2, will be devoted to the principles of nonviolence and where it came from, and that it's not new. It's actually from ancient India, etc. And because there's so many parts to it, we'll probably have stations just so we can hit more than one thing. That's all I've got. Sorry.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great book. Thank you so much for reaching out with this. And I'm really looking forward to book 2 and 3. I was so engaged by this. I really appreciate the language and the use of the language. I think it's frank. I think it makes sense. And so my concern really does fall in the scaffolding that surrounds that. And it sounds like you're on top of it and you're really working ahead to ensure that our students are able to approach language like this with grace and responsibility, right? And how we use that language. So thank you. Thank you for the book, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Another thank you from me. I think it's really important that our lit is diversifying constantly, and to see it happening at such a young grade level is really exciting, because I know if I had a chance to read a book like this in 6th grade, my educational career would have been very different. So I'm really excited for the students who get to experience the literature like this in their future.
I mean, I already read a few pages and I'm already kind of hooked. I hope the students will hopefully find it as interesting as I did the brief time I've had with it.
As part of your exploration of this text last year, I know that the perspectives that you brought were larger than just the ones brought by John Lewis. And so I know I think your intention is to continue to teach that unit. I believe that's later on in the school year, so that there are other perspectives which capitalize on that as well. That came up in the IMC as well as There were a couple of stakeholders who had remembered that either as a parent or someone who had heard about it, and they didn't want to lose sight of that other great unit that you do. So.
Oh, yeah. So just so you know, so the unit that Fred's referring to is the one that we worked on last year for the graphic novel unit that Sebi was a part of, that we piloted. And yeah, so within that, there was a lot of focus on these big topics around things like intersectionality, bias, dominant culture, home culture. So there was a lot of that, and that is a part of the literature circle unit that this prepares the students for. We work to help them give them the language that they need to sit in these circles and to engage in these discussions. And so having that and coming from and using this as a common novel, we just see this as a much richer way to broaden them and just to get to a lot of deeper, more meaningful conversations. And we all appreciate very much your conversation, your comments very much.
To the Lit Circle unit, we are adding 2, if not 3, novels, including Native American perspective, Latinx perspective from Puerto Rico, and people with disability, in this case, having hearing aids. So.
I don't know what that total is. 8? Oh, yeah, I know. 8 books.
I just want to thank you all for being here, putting in the hard work, making sure. What I love in reading it is challenging the concept that it doesn't take difficult words to learn, and then sometimes the easier the words, the more it makes you think. And I know that the tone at the middle school these days is, social justice and really kind of learning how to challenge their views and grow with them. So I appreciate that there's a way to do this that can capture interested readers who might not necessarily go for the 300-page novel. And equally, probably a much better learning environment for them as well. I also appreciate the time and commitment you guys are all showing, having received some of the emails explaining some of the difficult topics that you cover. And then not only is it a learning opportunity for parents, it also gives us the questions to ask our students about when they come home and when they're reading that we wouldn't necessarily know because it's not always shared with us by them. So that's very much appreciated. We all know, as Director Janini often said, they're all using the words, they're living these lives, and tiptoeing around it isn't doing anyone service. So thank you for confronting it head on. I'm sure it's not an easy thing to teach and something that a lot of people might kind of veer away from, but I appreciate it very much. And unless anyone has any other questions or comments, I'm going to see if there is a motion to either adopt tonight or to place it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I would like to move that we approve the text adoption for March for the 6th grade English language arts novel.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. The motion passes and March 1 is approved for 6th grade curriculum. You can bring it back at the next meeting. It takes like an hour to make. Okay, and moving on to 3B, Board Policy 1800 OE6, Budgeting, Financial Planning, Transportation Expenditure Authorization. And it is a public hearing.
You need it, yes. Open the public hearing.
Gavel, public hearing, and call it to order.
Unique set of circumstances this year for the Transportation Vehicle Fund. We 4 large buses in the spring of this year. Due to unforeseen circumstances, those buses were delayed until October for delivery. What that means is that the expenditures that we would have recognized in the 18-19 school year were being pushed into the 19-20 school year. This was not part of the plan that we had built for 19-20, and so we needed to bring to the board a budget extension to extend the authority for the district to purchase the buses. As we were preparing the bank reconciliation for November, we received the bank statements yesterday. We noticed that the invoice had gone through the accounts payable process and had been paid. So unfortunately, we have exceeded our authority. I have worked with OSPI through several calls yesterday and this morning to come up with a resolution. The needed action is to increase the ask for the budget extension, which we have modified tonight, to allow for an administrative penalty. By increasing it, OSPI can perform their administrative duties and say you shouldn't have exceeded your budget, and still allow us the opportunity to cover the needed expenses that we have. So what we have tonight is the original resolution for you to extend the budget authority with a marked up version showing the OSPI recommended amount that we ask for the extension. I know there's a lot of questions, so it's time.
How much was the penalty specifically?
So the penalty is the amount that we exceeded the authority. The buses cost $587. Our authorized amount was $90,000. We were only planning on spending $90,000 for one bus this year. Because the invoice was processed, we exceeded our budget by $480,000, which is not great. And it is a very unfortunate set of circumstances, but it was an unusual series of events. So we have increased the ask because the initial ask that we had put in the resolution and the budget extension, this is the first time we've done a budget extension in about 15 years, by the way, covered the initial all of the expenses that we needed. So the 4 large buses that were delayed, plus a second wheelchair lift enabled bus that is needed to cover a student that has come into the district mid-year. All of our other wheelchair lift enabled buses are currently serving other students. So between the 5 buses, the additional increase brought the needed budget authority up to $730,000. Thank you. The penalty was the $498. I'm sorry. So we've increased the resolution and the budget extension by that $490,000 so that OSPI can give us the administrative penalty, and we'll still have the needed capacity to cover the buses.
Can you describe the definition of the penalty? It is not an actual payment. It's kind of I'll use a hockey analogy. It's 2 minutes in the box for extending the authority because we, being ever efficient, paid for what we had received. And that's what caused that larger amount that we're asking for the extension to be on the advice of OSPI. But it's not a penalty where we're going to have to pay those extra dollars.
It is a non-fiscal penalty. It's an administrative, for lack of a better term, slap on the back of the wrist, saying you exceeded it, you shouldn't have exceeded it, we're going to take away the authority, but oh, by the way, make sure you extend your authority by the amount that we need to take back. I had 3 conversations with them to make sure I understood it. So it is an administrative penalty, not fiscal. We will not be paying OSPI any money. We will not have any of our apportionment dollars docked by this. It is just we'll get a letter saying you exceeded it or reducing your authority. Make sure that you have sufficient capacity to meet all the needed expenditures. So,
do we have controls in place to prevent this from happening
yes,
again? Out of
we
curiosity?
do. It was, as we mentioned, it was a burst of super efficiency, and we were also in the midst of closing our books, which means that we are submitting invoices for 2 fiscal years concurrently. In terms of how do we prevent this in the future, we'll be taking a look at the process itself, the accounts payable process. We're looking at bringing in a consultant to help refine the process. We've added additional staffing hours from existing staff. They're dedicating some of their daily time to help with the process, as well as some professional development for the business department. How do we look at the control process? How do we look at refining it and make sure that this doesn't happen again? And this has been a very unusual set of circumstances.
And I will add that you were very clear with the board earlier that this was going to be needed in previous meetings. So it's no surprise these buses were going to be purchased and this expenditure was going to be occurring. Just clearly a mistake was made in the time frame in which we paid it before this board-approved resolution was scheduled to happen anyway.
Yeah, and it was when I was talking with the OSPI, they're like, "Oh, you're doing it tonight," and this came up, and that's rough. But it very much was a timing issue, very much a timing issue. So
on the penalty money, just to understand the journey of this money, where is the money coming from in order to put the penalty in? And then what happens to that money moving forward?
So there's no money is actually moving anywhere. What we're doing is we're saying we need to. So the budget is essentially an authorization for the district to spend. We're saying we need X many dollars of capacity to do what we need to do. The penalty is when we say we need X dollars, OSPI is going to come back and say, well, you overspent by Y, so it is X minus Y. So that's going to be your new authority is X minus Y.
Any other questions or comments? Do you, so you're looking for us to approve the resolution 682?
Yes.
Do I have any motions?
I move we approve resolution 682.
Second.
Any further discussion? I just want to say I appreciate the. I'm not really understanding the minute and appreciate all the time that you've put in. Knowing obviously the bigger picture is what's important here. That we're getting the new buses. That you have let us know what's happening, and then it's easy to kind of brush over this because we would probably never know better, but you're presenting that to us, so I appreciate that. It's not, I know you take pride in doing the things right and not having these things come up. So thank you for letting us know, and I appreciate it. It gives me confidence in your department.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I guess I just want to clarify because I just for the people who are hearing this, it might sound kind of scary. Seems like we are spending money that we didn't expect to spend, but I'm just kind of explaining how I see it. It sounds like we have planned to spend this money. We just build it in a different time frame, but the money is there, so we're not asking for any additional money somewhere that anybody has to pay. So sometimes I think with the minutia, then the public might get confused and thinking that this was out of the blue. But it's just a matter of the money was in the bank account, but we would had hoped to spend that money in December, but we had spent it in November. But then so we just pre-spent. And then because we have all these rules and policies, we want to spend as a stay to our monthly or yearly budget, but it is not any extra money somewhere. So I think sometimes when people don't understand that, they get scared.
Yeah.
But I just want to clarify that.
Yes, it is very much. The funds are still in the money is still in the fund. It is still in the reserve accounts. It was not spent last year, and because of the timing difference, it is really just a timing issue. The money's there, and
I think it's also important to remind everyone that this impacts the transportation vehicle fund, not other funds. This is all within the transportation vehicle fund.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of approving resolution
682.
682, indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution 682 has been approved. And we will move on to Board Policy 1800, OE7, Financial Administration. Oh, I'm sorry. And the public hearing regarding Resolution 682 is now closed. We will move on to Board Policy 1800, OE7, Financial Administration, Quarterly Budget Update.
So this is a discussion piece for the board. We have these quarterly updates built in to reflect on where we are in our current year. And so Ty is here to present still.
So we're bringing you, it's not quite a full quarter. It's more of a 1/6 of the fiscal year. We're bringing the results from September and October. As I mentioned, we just barely got November today. So when we come back in January on the 9th, we will present November results. And at the end of January, we'll present the December results. And then we'll be on the right track in terms of not the right track, but a more normal month after track. In terms of the general fund for enrollments, we are 84 FTE above what we had projected. Part of this is due to we made some adjustments in September to reflect the lower kindergarten enrollment and lower elementary enrollment that has come in. As we were building the budget and having it approved, and as the school year started, more students came in. And so between the real increases were at kindergarten, 5th, 8th, and 12th grade. So essentially the final year and the first year of each of the grade sections or the buildings. Overall, average FTE for the year through October, and October, by the way, is the official FTE count for OSPI. Our average enrollment is 4,323. That is 57.5 FTE less than the prior October of 2018. Revenues for the month end of October through September and October was $13.3 million, or 19% of our budgeted funding. There have been no unanticipated increases or decreases. We are ticking along right where we should be for the general fund. October and April are the levy disbursement months from the Treasurer's Office. We collect tax dollars twice a year, meaning so that when we see the graph, historically, October is a huge spike because we collect about 57% of the revenue, and then it tapers off and evens out through the rest of the year until we get to April, and it repeats. Expenditures resulted in $11.2 million, or about 15% of budgeted use. It is still early in the year, still opportunity for us to take a look at what we're doing, and we have opportunities to look at how best are we employing our resources. We have the general fund status report. In terms of our cash flow, we are a bit below projections. Part of the reason is that the projections use historical data. This is the first full school year where we are entirely under the McCleary levy system. So we had higher levy collections last year than we do this year, which means the spikes, the highs and lows will be a little bit off in terms of cash flow. Enrollment demographics. I changed the graph up just a little bit so that we can focus more on the current year. Historical years are now the dotted lines. The current year is now the solid line. As you can see, the solid red line is the 1920 school year, and we are below historical enrollment for October for the past several years. Capital projects fund. We are about 35.76% of our budgeted collections. Our current activities include the ongoing facility master plan process. We are meeting with the facility planning committee on Monday. And we have just signed, and you approved at the last meeting, the contracts for Mary Waite Pool for the Department of Enterprise Services and Department of Commerce. We are scheduling work. The next closure is in April. Also, we just found out that the foundation received another $15,000 grant for the pool. We've had about $45,000 in grants from the community for the pool. The last set of grants that we received, we used for the new starting blocks at the pool. Other work that we're looking at is we're planning some upgrades for the high school commons. It is in some desperate need of acoustical treatments and new flooring. So we are working with options and how do we improve. And our student reps are saying, yes, please, quickly. And we're also finishing up the secure air front entrance to the high school. We're bringing in some new benches for the vestibule. It'll help dampen out some of the sound and also up the feel a little bit, as well as some smaller projects that we have throughout the fall. We have the budget status report. We also have the cash flow. Capital projects is notoriously difficult to project for cash flow because depending on the projects, depending on when contractors submit their invoices, it really messes with projections. This is the levy project list. So all of the levy projects that we've been working on are here, as well as the budgets, historical spending, and current spending for the year. Transportation Vehicle Fund, thank you very much for passing the resolution. So when I prepared the budget status report, we had not closed November and I had not noticed that we had overspent yet. So the budget status report still reflects the need for the increase. And then if you look at the encumbrance lines, you can see that we did have the buses encumbered, which means that we've set aside funds but hadn't expended it yet. Cash flow, because we hadn't spent the money yet, we were coming in at higher than projection. And so the red line doesn't track. Normally the actual line does track fairly close to projected spending. Debt service, we are exactly where we should be for debt service. We are receiving collections at the expected amount. Cash flow is where we want it to be. We will have I believe it's just interest payment in December. And then we'll have principal interest in June. We pay 2 payments a year. And then the ASB fund is always fun to deal with because it's always so variable. We are coming in slightly below projections. Last year we had a gangbuster year for the ASB fund, which again, when you have awesome projections or awesome actual activity projections come in at certain higher than actual rates. Overall, the district is in good fiscal position for the start of the fiscal year, with the exception of the Transportation Vehicle Fund, but we are now covered thanks to the resolution. Any questions about the budget stats report?
Thank you very much. I know we've made a promise to our constituency to do this on a quarterly basis and keep track of this, especially with all the changes that have happened. So very much appreciate the work you've done here, keeping us on track and on budget. And also doubly appreciate how much more difficult it becomes as enrollment is dropping a little bit, as we see here. It really requires us to do much more careful budgeting. There's less room for error. So thank you very much on all this.
Cool. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that you have a typo. You're missing a word under the general fund. It says, so far there have been unanticipated increases or decreases in revenue sources.
Thank you for catching that. We'll make the adjustment. Thank you.
So at the annual conference, I started out with the pre-conference workshop and budgeting and bargaining. And so going through part 2 of the new WASDA Budgeting 101 section, I just want to say I have an even deeper appreciation for what you and your team do. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of typos, Mary Waite is apparently spelled wrong as well. It's a W-A-Y-T-E.
Did I miss the Y?
You used an I.
did. I did. I am sorry. I
I
apologize.
don't know if that's a significant issue.
We will also fix that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Moving on to Board Policy 1800 OE 11, Facilities and Capital Assets Master Planning Services Update.
So this is an information item for the board as well. As Ty mentioned, we are in our facilities planning committee work, and the second meeting for the group is scheduled for this coming Monday. And at that meeting, the discussion will be centered around enrollment and building facility condition. And so part of the process for the facility master planning is reaching back to the demographer that we've worked with in previous years. And the last update was in 2017. So requesting that update from Dr. Kendrick. We'd hoped to have him here tonight, but he is gone for the entire month. So I believe we'll try to schedule something for January, but we did want you to see this report as it is going to be also utilized by the Facilities Planning Committee at their, as a work group on Monday.
So in conversation with Dr. Kendrick, and I believe we had mentioned this probably, and it's been a while, but 18-19 was an interesting year when it came to demographics and enrollment for students region-wide. Many districts came in well below their projections. In fact, in conversation with Dr. Kendrick on Monday, his analysis was that essentially there was zero net growth for 18-19 when it comes to student population. And then it ticked up slightly county-wide by about 3,000 students out of 190,000 students in King County. So it's 3,000 students is not necessarily a huge growth when it comes to it. But he did say that they have noticed declines in some other regions within King County, most likely due to Amazon is saying that they're done hiring. Housing prices within the region have driven some people out, as well as some other items. One factor that we have been looking at in terms of student enrollment is the birth rate. Normally, we receive about 160% of the birth rate on the island, which means that we have more people moving on than out when it comes to family size. That dropped about 130% for 1920. So even though we had a very large birth cohort 5 years ago, the number of families moving onto the island has decreased than the average, to less than the average. Dr. Kendrick's projections show that we are estimated to decline slightly over the next 2 to 4 years, and kick back up in the last 5 to 6 years of the projections. A lot of the outer region of the projections are based on assumptions of housing growth due to light rail, as well as projected development in the north end of the island. So mid-range projection ends about 4,500 students, which is roughly where we can say that we ended the 17-18, which is our peak year. So for all intents and purposes, in the long range perspective, we are flat enrollment, slight decline, recovery in the end. So any questions?
I was just doing a quick Google search, said King County population has increased about 1.7%. Seattle population has increased about 2.3%. And really what's happening here is younger people are moving into the region. The average age in King County is actually dropping. So all that really makes a lot of sense. And then it also implies that just as you're predicting, just as Les is predicting, over 5 years out, there will be a population increase, obviously, as kids come out. And then 10 years out, from that 5 years, those kids will be entering school. And these are the types of things, our facilities plan that Deborah and I represent the school board on, really need to consider as we build this long-range plan. So this information is incredibly important. And so thank you very much for helping us understand it. And I assume we'll get Les here to take us through this.
We're going to be working with Les to find a date when he can come and do a full analysis and explain all of his assumptions and what's really gone into his work. He has a huge breadth of knowledge. He works with essentially all of King County, all the districts within King County to project their student enrollment. And very, very well respected in his work. So these numbers are very helpful and informative for what we're looking forward to.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting to me that Amazon is saying they're not hiring, and yet when we were at the WASDA conference in Bellevue, we're looking out over these like 3 vast holes that are all going to be huge high-rise Amazon buildings. So we'll see how that pans out. But
well, it's not that they're moving staff away, but that their hiring plan is essentially complete.
Okay.
So.
Does anyone, well, actually, I wanted to ask, since this is a master planning services update, Director D'Souza, did you have anything else you wanted to add from our first meeting last month that you thought is important for the board?
I think the biggest piece is that Malum Architects have been an amazing facilitator for this. We've had about 40 people in the room who have volunteered to give feedback around the facilities plan. I think Malum did a very efficient job of presenting us with information, and then a very efficient job of taking input back from the group. We had student voices present who were very vocal and well represented the students. So very, very pleased with that. Some adults got pushed back by them. So I thought that was wonderful. Yeah, great facilities plan, and very excited about what will come out of that. If this first meeting is any indication, I think it's exactly what we wanted.
Thank you. Thank you for participating in that. And the feedback that I got, with Director D'Souza and I both kind of took a back seat on that and really watched. And the feedback that I got was there was a little hesitation of sitting through a 3-hour meeting. And I got really positive feedback from the people that I spoke to, that it was scheduled really well, that it was run really well. time wasn't wasted. It was important information and good discussion. And always appreciate the dinner we get from the department as well, and cookies, and it keeps everyone happy. So thank you for that. Look forward to getting into further in-depth discussion using these enrollment reports as well as the facility reports of actually where we are. We did very high level, wishful. What do we like? Was the topic of this first meeting, and then we're going to start getting more information about what actually we have and what we're going to need to do. Are there any other questions or comments?
I had a question, and I know we also have an enrollment report coming up on the consent agenda, and this may be more of a question for Dr. Kendrick or for someone else, but when families leave the district, what kind of surveying of them do we do? And is that data tracked in some way or analyzed in some way? And do we ever get a report on that?
Fred's going to respond to that one.
So that one, the first part of your question first, yes, we survey all families twice a year who have left the district. We do one the first 2 weeks of September to try to capture all the families who essentially left in the second semester of the year or over the summer. And then we do another survey right at the end of January, 1st of February, and that catches anyone from kind of that September, that first semester time frame. We have a Google form. It's a survey we've been giving. And then every presidential year, election year, you get a more comprehensive report, which is actually part of OE9, which you'll see tonight as well. So the more comprehensive report as to what the data is showing, that's going to be another 2 years out. However, you'll receive or a year out, but you will receive a partial report tonight in OE9.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd just say I was kind of looking forward to Dr. Kendrick being here, so I'm sad I missed him. I was in the audience when he presented his findings last time. It was really interesting. So if you get a chance to go back and review that meeting, it's well worth it. And as he explains the process that he goes through with his team to come up with these projections.
Homework.
Yeah, but it's great that he's going to be able to be there to present to the team. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move on to Section 5, Post-Monitoring Language Review. Board policy. I'm skipping over Section 4, Full Governance Process Monitoring. We'll jump back to that. Board Policy 1800, OE9, Communication and Support to the Board.
So this is one of the compliance reports. This one always generally comes at this time of the year. And we have, as you can see when you look at the report, there generally it's a monitoring level 1, except for the items that are delineated on the report, 3, 14, 16, 17, and 18 are level 2. And those are the ones which staff will present on.
President Lurie, do you want to go through one by one, or would you like me to present on 3, 14, 16, 17, and 18 and then approve all together?
I think we should present and approve all together, and I'm getting nods. So
great. Thank you. So looking at OE9 throughout the year, obviously Superintendent Koloski and staff, we present to you in a number of ways underneath OE9. And this is our annual report to you to be able to take a closer look at each of those areas that we try to keep you informed about. So beginning with Section 3, which is picking up right where we left off with the question from Director Tucker, and that is taking a look at the number of students who are moving out of the district, the number of students who are moving into the district, what's happening with enrollment with regard to students in homeschool, students who are seeking choice transfer to another district, and or going to private schools. And so you'll note that we had 303 new students enroll for the 1920 school year as of this report. 210 students moved or left the district, and we try to calculate that based on, compared to last year, not including the graduates, how many students have left. And so you look at that and you're thinking, but Ty just reported that we're decreasing enrollment. That doesn't take into account that the graduating class was larger than the incoming kindergarten class, as well as we may have had other students who were opting for choice transfer or whatnot. Many of our choice transfer students tend to be similar to, we accept students here on choice transfer. The largest number comes from our staff and the staff who are bringing children to the school district. We do have a number of staff or citizens who work in other school districts who take their children as well. So that's what makes that up. And again, we will be sending out our next survey of our families who left the district. And we ask them in general, what schools did they attend or did their children attend? What grade levels did they attend? Did they leave the district for private school? Were they moving out of state? Were they moving out of the country? So we try to get a good understanding of why they would have left. And then we ask for feedback. What are some things that we did well from a teaching and learning standpoint, our administrators, how their overall experience was as a family, and then they have a chance for an open-ended question. So. Questions on 3.0, I would just note that the uptick in private school students, that comes out to be about a 4% increase. It increases and decreases over time, although prior to the recession is where we really had some of our high water marks. During the recession, we saw many fewer students enrolling in private schools, and we still have not come back to where we were prior to about 2009. So questions on section 3?
How do you know that a family has a child enrolled in private school? Do you get that information from the private schools?
Yes, our department does a tremendous job at literally cold calling as many of the private schools in the area as possible. We have a set list and we call them and we're asking one by one, verifying. Some of them we know and we're just verifying. Others we're calling to see if there's been any new enrollments. Sometimes we're hearing about those, or some of our families are still receiving what we call ancillary services. So they're receiving some services from the district, whether or not their children are participating in a sport that their school doesn't offer, and then they can still participate here on Mercer Island, or an activity. So there's a number of webs that kind of are out there that we're trying to seek that information from.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that we're tracking students who are leaving the district. And when I hear that, I'm thinking of it's like a student success, right? What are we doing or not doing that's getting people to leave the district? And so I was wondering, what do we do with this data? Does it inform our future? Does it inform the way that we create better climate, better curriculum, provide some of the needs that we currently are not meeting? So.
Yes, and yes. That information is helpful to determine sometimes where students are going. There's a few private schools where we were seeing larger numbers go to for several years. So we started working on those areas of what aren't we doing in our school district, maybe to support those learners or those students. In many cases, many of our families are moving out, usually the large percentage because they're moving out of the region or their parents are taking employment somewhere else. But certainly the ones who are moving to private schools or making a different choice here in Washington and still maintaining their residence on Mercer Island, those are the ones that we're paying the closest attention to, trying to get some of that information. And in some cases, we even follow up with phone calls and we call those families and we ask for clarity and reach back out to them as well. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to our next portion of the report, and that moves all the way to, I believe, we go to 14, and this has to do with the Public Records Act. This is really Aaron's wheelhouse, and maybe Aaron, you want to chime in either from there or from here. Come on over. But the board has been interested for the past several years in looking at the number of public records requests that are being made, and then what's the fiscal and in many ways, what's the overall impact on our system.
So as Fred highlighted, this is just sort of a historical look at what our public records has looked at. As a public records officer, we receive requests and we process them from members of the public. It's good to highlight that this is different from FERPA requests. So FERPA requests are those requests by parents for their students' records. So that does not appear here for many reasons, but they're completely different acts, have different timelines, and that's not something that you have monitored, though it does take staff time and resources to do those types of things. So year on year, you can see that we've continued to have records requests, but the cost of those requests has gone down. A lot of that is because it's done in-house. And we cost less overall than outsourcing to outside counsel for review. And we have had some slightly fewer number of pages produced. But again, it's important to note that the pages produced are not the pages reviewed. Because many times there are non-responsive records that just don't get produced to the requester because we get mishits based on the request. Are there any questions?
Does this get updated to the website as well? I noticed we got.
Yeah, this will be updated to the website once you've had an opportunity to approve it. So we do it currently on an annual basis.
Do you believe that the process that you're now using and meeting more in-house than sending outside to legal counsel, do you think that this procedure is effective?
Given the nature of the act, I think this is probably the most effective we can be given the act, right? And given what we have to do and given our current systems. So it is somewhat cumbersome because we have paper and computers, so it's not like we can just run a search. To have more intelligent, for lack of a better term, e-discovery type things is just something we're not in the business of e-discovery and having redaction software. So could we be more efficient? Could it be more cost effective in terms of actually doing the work in-house? Potentially, but it will that'll be outweighed by the cost of the actual programs to do it. So I think we've had a nice hybrid of using outside counsel when we have to, and doing it in-house and using our resources. I think we've also gotten better at doing our searches efficiently. And frankly, we're more thoughtful about how we track our records in the first place. So we know where they are, so we spend less time looking for them, if that makes sense. So I think we hope to continue to improve, but I think this is a good model.
So the city makes the records available in real time, almost. As the requests come in, they update their website in real time, as opposed to us doing it once a year. Is there a reason for that difference?
There are. So I want to just be clear: the city doesn't make its records available in real time. They make their requests available in real time. And I'm not trying to challenge you in any way, but I just want to make sure that distinction is drawn. From the district's perspective, it's important not to do it real time because that's essentially put straight into a website form and it just gets published. We get a lot of requests that are framed of public records requests that are actually about parent students or about other students. And so for them to go immediately on the website without sort of a stopgap could risk sharing confidential student information, which is something that we are not as a district allowed to do. It's certainly not something we want. So that process is not appropriate for a school district. And I'm actually not aware of any school district that has a process like that. That doesn't mean there isn't one, but I'm not aware of one. And realistically, members of the public could make a request for current public records if they wish. And we have not, it's not something that we get. The other thing that we also do, as I said, we get hybrid requests where they're asking for some things that are public records and we have to break it out.
Thank you.
No worries. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 16. 16 is a reflection of the alternative learning experiences and the headcount of students who are taking online learning. At one point, this was referred to as web, but we tend to now just call it ALE or alternative learning environment. And it's tracking the number of students who are accessing the online courses that we offer through 3 partners, Fuel Education, Apex, and Spokane Virtual Learning. Several years ago, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction removed themselves as being kind of the middle organization. They used to operate a pretty large department that was the go-between. So districts would work with OSPI, who would maintain the partnerships with the various online learning platforms. They pulled out of it for a variety of reasons and put the districts more in control of those contracts and the workings. So the 3 that we work most closely with or exclusively with are those 3 there. So you can see over time, I do have one correction that I want to draw your attention to that we will update. In preparation for tonight, I was looking and those numbers didn't look correct. And so we went back and reran them. In 17-18, when I pulled this over, I don't know if it just didn't pull over correctly, but the 9 to 12 should actually be 11.96. So the average monthly student FTE in 17-18 is 11.96. And then the row below in average monthly student headcount was actually 64. The reason why that's important is if you look at the 17-18 and 18-19 school years, you had a very similar, you had 2 very similar years. And so when I was looking at that, I was thinking this can't be accurate, and it wasn't. So those are updated there. A couple of items just to point out on this. The 82 semester courses, those are the total number of courses that they're taking. And the reason why you have individual students served is you have some students who are taking the same course. And that's why there's the slightly less factor there. The 13.06 FTE is remembering that each course is really only a 1.69 FTE. So each though the student head counts are higher, their FTE, because they're taking one course potentially at a time, that's why you're getting fractions there as well. So the average monthly student head count in the 18-19 school year at any one time was 71 students taking courses online. The way we've typically been handling that is we don't just have the students taking the classes and wishing them well and hoping they pass. They do check in with a staff member on a regular basis. We have 0.6 FTE dedicated to our ALE courses so that the students are not only accountable to the online teacher, but we also have a teacher in our school district who's checking in, monitoring, and supporting their learning. Questions?
It would be useful to see, as a suggestion, the top 5 most popular courses. It looks like they're taking about 82 courses. There's some multiple enrollment. Having an understanding of what courses are the most popular might be useful, especially in light if it's AP Math and those type of things that have come up before as a concern. The other useful thing might also be what the average grade is in these courses. Is this environment really helpful for kids to be learning without a teacher? And not having a teacher, are the grades higher or lower than perhaps the average of having a teacher would be interesting.
Sure. And I'll have so as not to wade into your discussion, I'll allow you to take the notes on that. You'll have language review at your next board meeting, and you could certainly discuss that and add that to that. And I'd be happy to offer any insights I may have as you have that discussion.
Are those hard items to get? I'm curious.
The top 5 courses will be very easy. The average grades, many of the grades, some of them are taken as passes. And so I can take a look and I can take a little bit of homework and take a look at that. But the top 5 courses, very easy.
I want to follow up on that. Also, I would be interested in learning what are some of the reasons why students choose to go on here. And that would also, I think, help us inform what we're doing and or not providing.
And I'll look at your fundamental report on this as well, because I believe we have a fundamental report that addresses some of that. I'll double check on that as well and have some of that information so as not to duplicate it.
I just want to comment on the 0.6 FTE teacher who is working with these students through the school district. I don't believe that's required, but it certainly seems like best practice, helping kids stay on track. And that way they have 2 teachers for the price of 1. So their online teacher and their school district teacher. I've seen it working, meeting even, I think, weekly, if not more, but at least weekly, to make sure that they're staying on track, which is so important. And I know one of the concerns with online learning, while there's many benefits, concerns is isolation and being left to their own devices, and that is rarely successful. So I appreciate that priority for our students.
You bet. And most of the students actually go to Crest as their check-in point. So they are, we do have some exceptions where some students are at home and they might be homebound and accessing a course, and then we're using video technology or phone conferencing with those students. But the vast majority of those students are coming to an actual site in our schools around other students, and many of them are, none of our students are exclusively online. We do not have that type of charter as a school to be offering exclusive online classes at Crest or whatnot. So every student is taking 3 or fewer courses as well. So they're integrated into other courses. Many of them, Director Din, just to your question a little bit anecdotally, many of the students are either taking a course for credit recovery, they're taking a course like a Washington State history class because they didn't have that requirement fulfilled in the state they came from, but they need it for graduation. Some of them are taking it in the instance of this school year because we couldn't offer a course at the high school, so a cohort of students will get together and take a class together. So there's a number of reasons that they take it, but it's, each student has their story, as they say. So.
Summer and is also included in this count.
Summer school, we also have online summer school. We're seeing fewer and fewer students taking online learning in the summer. It hasn't been as successful for our summer school students because they're not also coming every day and there's so much independence involved. So that one, that is not as strong of a draw. It's more our students during the school year who are taking courses.
As we've hit 8 o'clock, just want to thank our student representatives for their report today and being present and excellent contributions, and just have a great winter break and relax and enjoy it.
Do we get to go home, Superintendent Kolaski? Oh, okay. Section 17, we're now looking at our athletic program. This is one that you see in your Fundamental 7 report. That's typically in March. And so this data is somewhat repetitive, but as a reminder, taking a look at participation in athletics You're looking at you're looking at gender participation, as well as a look at what does the proportionality look like. A number that would be negative would be underrepresented in the percent differential, and a number that's in the positive is overrepresented. And then obviously the higher the number or the lower the number, or as you move away from zero, I should say, you're getting more and more disproportionate. In our case, we have closed this gap tremendously, and you can see that we almost have perfect proportionality now in our athletic participation. Keeping in mind that drill and dance and cheerleading are still not recognized as athletics by WIAA, and neither are our unified sports programs, and so those are not included in these numbers. Questions on the athletic portion? Last one is 18. Reporting to you annually about restraint and isolation. Restraint and isolation has changed and morphed over the years. We actually provide several reports during the year. One is to you, and then the other most significant report is to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. We do anticipate more legislative changes, is what we're hearing on restraint and isolation, but they shouldn't change any of our practices that we're already using or not using in our schools. You can see the definitions there of restraint versus an escort versus isolation, and then a reverse evacuation. And so if you look at our totals from last year, we had 70 incidents with 32 involving restraint, 47 using isolation. And then you can see that many times they were brief in nature. When I talked to and reflected with our special education team, they thought it was important to remind the community and you as a board that many of these incidences are by a minority of students, and all of the students who would have been involved, especially in the restraints and isolations that happen in a repetitive nature, they have aversive intervention plans or they have behavior plans that are already spelled out, have been communicated and discussed with parents. And so I'm a little hesitant to go into exact numbers because we start to get into revealing potential actual students, but I do want to say that the numbers here are up from the previous year. And the reason is our new special education or special services director and assistant director have a slightly different philosophy on how they want to start tracking restraint and isolation. In the past, if a student had, let's say, a 2-hour incident and there were 2 restraints used and 1 isolation used, we were treating that as one incident. Both our director and our assistant director believe that in order to get more accurate data and figure out what's going on and better serve students, we need to count that as 3. And so that we can look at that data a little closer. So the number this year is inflated from last year and will probably continue to be slightly inflated from previous years. And that's a philosophy change in how we're going to be reporting and tracking the information. So with that, I will take questions.
Is there any benefit to be separating out restraint versus isolation?
The benefit is when we're going with restraint, we're going hands-on versus isolation is we are keeping a student from leaving a particular environment or we are having them in a separate place, but we're not going hands-on with that student. So that's really the key difference for us. And it's helpful for us to know that. Certainly from a report, the state requires us to report it that way, but it's helpful for us in reflection because the last resort is hands-on. Though we don't want to use any of these techniques, we know we need to for the protection of that student, other students, and our staff. But we'd rather isolate than restrain if we have to choose between the two.
Any other questions or comments on this?
It's so difficult, and when I bring up the OSPI report card in this, having that less than 1%, And to see the number of students so small, we can't ask those specific questions regarding race, gender, that I would be curious about. How is the district tracking that information if you can, and how are you utilizing that to create best outcomes for students in their individualized track?
Yep, great question. It begins at the highest level of just looking at demographics of our students who have been identified as needing special education services as a whole. And then we're breaking down data all the way into how are they achieving on certain assessments, how do they come up in terms of how many response protocols do we have, how many have we written. So we look at those very closely. Going back, it's not as hard as you think, because going back to this again, it's a minority of students who are making up these, and so we know who those students are, and we're looking at those lenses of is it a level change? Is it a fifth grader who went to sixth grade? Is it a seventh grade or an eighth grader who went to ninth grade? Is it, what other factors are there? Is it certain grade levels? Is it certain times a day? Is it a bus versus is it when we come back from breaks where it might be, or right before breaks? We tend to see a lot of escalation right before breaks because we know schedules are going to change and students are reacting differently. So all of those are looked at, especially as we're building and rebuilding the ERPs.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the kind of granular look at the details of this that you guys are taking. And I just wondered, I see that there were no student injuries in those 70 incidents and just one staff injury. Do you also track complaints like from parents or from, say, other staff members about these incidents? Is that something that gets looked at?
I don't know. I don't know if track is the right word, but we certainly hear them and listen to them and then try to respond. Sometimes that involves adding staffing. And we have to go to tie with the data behind it that says, we think this is happening, and there's certainly a function behind that behavior. But if we would be able to better support that with staff, or is there training that we need to do? So the tracking is less about trying to track it and monitor it for data over time, but rather take that information and help to make a better decision, either in the immediate time or in the future as it goes forward.
That's helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
One more thing too, and this is coming out of working with the Superintendent's Equity Advisory Committee Council today. A lot of intentional work happening in that room around identifying implicit bias and situations like that. And I know a lot of professional development is happening, coaching, everything, providing support to staff and educators and from beginning and to end of the day. So while I asked that question, I also wanted to point out that I also recognize that I see the district doing a lot of intentional work in order to break down those systems and really create the best path for success for students. So thank you.
You bet. And that, that's I see our association president is here, and partnership with all of our teachers and our staff, our bus drivers and others who are trying to get better and trying to do the hard work ourselves about our own lens and how we show up each and every day. And there's a lot of work still to be done, but it's the right work.
Any other questions or comments on the entire OE9 monitoring report? Looking for a motion.
I move we find the superintendent in compliance of Board Policy 1800 OE9.
Seconded.
Any discussion on any of the? All in favor of finding the superintendent in compliance of OE9 monitoring report indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The board finds the superintendent in compliance of OE9 monitoring report. Thank you for your time in putting all of this together for us. Now we'll move on to item 5A, post-monitoring language review. Board Policy 1800 OE2, Global Executive Constraint Monitoring. Does anyone have any suggestions for change of language? Hearing none, we will move on. That does not need any action. We will move on to B, Board Policy 1800 OE12, Emergency Superintendent Succession Monitoring Language Review. Does anyone have any suggestions or concerns regarding language on this? Seeing none. Moving on to C, Board Policy 1800 OE3, Appropriate Treatment of Community Members Language Review. Give a moment to review it quickly and see if anyone has any questions, concerns, or discussion regarding this language. And seeing none, unless someone wants another moment, we will move on to Board Policy 1001, Governance Commitment. Does anyone have any proposed recommendations or items they would like to discuss regarding this?
Yes. In 1.2, it talks about results described in its policy 2020. That needs to go to 0001.
I think that's an excellent recommendation.
Yeah, that seems more just administrative cleanup.
For our new board members, as we changed Board Policy 2020 and renumbered it to Board Policy 1, attempted to make these changes throughout our policies, and Director Giannini often caught one, so thank you. Any other recommendations for language change regarding our Board Policy 1001? Moving on to Section E, Board Policy 1005, Board Officer and Board Member Duties Language Review.
Since we've got new board members in place as well, I think, and new officers, the piece about conduct timely board meeting debriefings and periodic self-assessments to ensure process improvement. We have in the past talked about some sort of review at the end of each meeting, which would allow people to give feedback in real time, in some sense, in the moment, as opposed to waiting 6 months to 1 year. I don't know if that's something we could consider now as part of this, or it could be considered as an aside to this.
That is a topic that we have discussed putting on our study session in January to discuss how we want to. So I would propose we discuss it then, and we can always place this board policy back on for language review should we want to change it regarding that issue.
That works for me.
Okay. The broader topics of our study session will include discussing whether or not how this board is going to do its work in terms of norms and including that topic. I think that this is in there. Section 1, annual organizational meeting. We modified it at the last meeting to include Is this the policy that talks about the minutes, approving the minutes? I'm just not seeing it, but I think it's here. And I'm also seeing another board policy 2020 Section 2A2. A. 2A2A. Refrain from making any interpretive decisions under president.
And I see where the minutes come in.
Am I just missing that?
It's in the third paragraph under section 1.
I highlighted it.
Thank you.
Normal order of business.
At the last meeting, we added on through motion, we added on wanting the former board to approve the work that we had done at the previous meeting with regards to the resolution, as well as, that was it, in addition to the minutes. And then if we had not approved the prior literature, we were going to add it there, but we ended up approving it. So I'm proposing that we change the language basically to not make it as specific, and so that we don't need to make a motion, that we include the meeting minutes, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, in addition to any other work completed by the former board, or something like that.
It is an interesting. It's an interesting idea. I would hesitate to make that commonplace. I appreciate why we did it this last time, but I would hesitate to make it commonplace for a board to quickly approve policy or resolution before a new board is seated that same evening. I think that would be, in some sense, poor practice. And we have seen this at the national level where it has really been ultra poor practice.
Any other comments?
I think that makes sense. I thought how we kind of handled that specific case was good. I'm not sure legally how it would align with a WAC or an RCW, finishing any outstanding business or any unfinished business, or I'm not sure how that would play out legally. Yeah.
Is that the first time that it's been done like that in your memory?
It's not an issue that comes up a lot. I just wanted to put it out there because we fortunately anticipated it. So we were able to make a motion at the prior meeting. And I think that's a strong argument not to. I just would hate to see work that's basically been, and I'm talking about work that's been completed. Not trying to rush through anything, but I appreciate that. And I don't see a need, as long as we're on top of it, don't see a need to change the language.
I also think that resolution was something we had in progress for 4 meetings at least. Many times public was able to give input, board members were giving input. It was very transparent, very well done. And I think in the interest of being able to take input at that last meeting, it got pushed to this final meeting. I appreciate all the circumstances that required us to get that done. And I think that's a special case that handled in the way it was handled was well done, and actually probably an example of how to do this.
Unless there's any other comments or questions, we will move forward without any proposed changes. Other than the administrative of the board policy number change. We are at section 6, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed indicate by saying nay. And the consent agenda is approved. And moving on to section 7A, Superintendent's Report.
Nothing major that you're probably not already aware of, that we are approaching our winter break after next week. So wishing everyone a restful and relaxing winter break, and to let the board know, as well as the public, that the superintendent's office will be closed to the public for the winter break time period. That's something that we want to notice, and we'll be noticing on our website as well as on the physical building as well, that we are closed in the superintendent's office for the winter break. And thank you. Moving on to board announcements, inquiries, and reports. Director Dan, is there anything that you would like to report?
No, just I'm really excited to be here and to work with all my esteemed fellow board members. And yeah, I just look really forward to being more involved in Mercer Island. And so thank you for all those who elected me.
And Director D'Souza.
Just a welcome to the new board members, Maggie, Ty, and Tam. Thank you very much for joining us and taking this on. Your spouses don't know what they're in for, actually. And congratulations to Deborah and Maggie Ty as new officers. So cheers.
Attended the Superintendent's Equity Advisory Council meeting this morning. Great work happening there as we followed up on our previous workshop over the summer dealing with racial equity in education, and then beginning to kind of narrow into some action areas. So a shout out to that whole team there, everyone supporting it, our facilitators from the Puget Sound Educational Services District and all the people who are working on that. Also, had a great time at annual conference. Just ahead of that, I did officially graduate from the Leadership WASDA coursework and presented my capstone project. So it was nice to be honored at the reception there. And then leading into our different caucus meetings and representing Mercer Island at Delegate Assembly, I'm very proud to say that WASDA, for the first time ever, has now a permanent position that deals with educational equity as a guiding statement on the work that we do. And so it's very exciting to have that there and to have been a part of the team that brought that forward. I have been elected back to the Legislative Committee for the next 2 years. So I'll be one of 4 individuals representing Direct Area 2, which is essentially King County and 20 different school districts. So I look forward to doing that work. And I think that covers it. That's what I've been up to. Thank you.
Congratulations on that and on your graduation. And I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for the warm welcome and all the district staff who've been helping to orient us. So it's nice to finally be up here. Thank you.
I just want to thank the board for the confidence in putting me up here. I look forward to the challenge of serving in the leadership role this year. And congratulations to our new members. I'm really looking forward to this board working together and furthering all of the hard work that's been done in the last, in the past. I want to recognize a recent passing of a former teacher and associate principal, Lilburn Layer. Mr. Layer was a music teacher and band director and then associate principal at Mercer Island High School for about 22 years. I had the privilege of being one of his students, and I was actually hoping that the students would still be here because Mr. Layer, I think, was instrumental, pun intended, in developing the band program, the music program that we have, in especially the marching band. I'm a member of You're from Mercer Island group on Facebook as a graduate And the number of comments, 85 comments on Facebook when someone posted the obituary for Mr. Layer. He was a beloved teacher and administrator. And really, I think our community would be in a very different place had he not been present. He raised several of his kids on the island who also went through the program with many of us. And I know that former director Jorgensen also he actually approached me and asked if I was one of his students as well, and I proudly say yes. And this is from Director Jorgensen in terms of it would be great to start researching and not being sure what the scholarships are for the music department, but looking into possibly starting an alumni scholarship in memory of Mr. Layer. He's beloved by several generations of our students who are now also parents of students on the island. So just want to express our condolences to his family and let them know the impact that he had on many of our lives. The final piece of business, we did not reassign our PAC representation. And I think that's something that we should just do. As board members, we represent we attend PAC meetings for each of the schools, as well as superintendent advisory committees and PTA council meetings. And I don't believe Ralph had any, he didn't take any, but we need to reassign Director Drinkwater's assignments and, I'm sorry? IMS and West Mercer.
If we go back to the minutes, you can find the minutes from that meeting on the September 26th meeting on the consent agenda, which shows all the dates for those specific PAC meetings and stuff, if that's helpful. Sorry.
No, appreciate it. I meant to look that up to see when they were in terms of scheduling. I'm not going to come up with that now. Would since we're heading into break and there aren't likely to be any meetings, would the board want to push this to our January meeting for assignment so that we can take some time to figure out dates and times? Okay.
And I will definitely include in an update to the board is here's what's needed and the day and time. So you can sort of address your availability and look at your calendars. We do have a meeting right when we come back from break on the first Thursday in January. So we can absolutely address that at that time.
And if by some chance something comes up, which I'm pretty sure it isn't going to, I can put out a request for someone to attend.
I didn't see any of those meetings happening in January. Okay. There's the community advisory. I don't know if that has anything in January.
I doubt
it doesn't. Okay. So then the only other question is typically the legislative representative would become the new liaison to the PTA council advocacy meetings. And so unless there's any objection, I'll just head that direction. All right.
Looks like lots of nods.
Okay.
And we are moving to executive session. It's 8:34 to discuss potential litigation or litigation pursuant to RCW 4230-1101I or little one. And as well as performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 4230-1101G. No final action will be taken. And we anticipate that the executive session will run about 30 minutes. Did we say 30? 30 minutes. So we will be in recess in executive session until 9:04 when we will reconvene to adjourn the meeting, and do not expect any further action to be taken. No motion, right? All right.